What's going on, Raider fans and Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation First and 10, your bi-weekly go-to for Raider news and analysis. And in this case, post-game analysis. Third straight loss by the Raiders, 20-15 to the Rams. The Rams are trying to give the Raiders this game, basically. But the Raiders didn't oblige. 4 more turnovers, all at the hands of quarterback Gardner Minshew. What? Gardner Minshew, why was he playing quarterback? Yeah, well, Aiden O'Connell got hurt in the first quarter. It's feared that he might have a broken thumb. He goes out in the first quarter. Gardner Minshew comes in, turns the ball over 4 times, 3 interceptions, a fumble recovery that got returned for a touchdown. One of the interceptions sets up a touchdown. Just not a good day for the Raiders against a very beatable team in the Los Angeles Rams, who came in 1-4. Adam Hill, and this crowd obviously was a Raider-centric crowd here at SoFi Stadium, as it often is. But the Raiders kept shooting themselves in the foot once again.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, you laid it out. There was every opportunity for them to win. They moved the ball up and down the field. They clearly moved the ball better than the Rams did. The Rams really couldn't get anything going. The Raiders ran the ball as well as they have all season long. Had some pretty good drives too, but they couldn't finish in the red zone for one. Settled for 5 field goals. Talked to Daniel Carlson after the game to say I know that's not, the record that you want. You're tying your career high in field goals is not what you want to do when you don't have any extra points to kick all day long. So 5 field goals isn't going to get it done, even when the other team is trying to hand it to you, and especially if you give them 7 points with a turnover going the other way. So not a good day for the Raiders in terms of trying to win the game. Not a good performance, and all the questions that we had last week are still kind of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're questions that need to be answered anymore. It kind of is what it is. This is a team that's prone to turnovers, prone to making some really ill-advised penalties. You mentioned the 2 times in the red zone today. They were 0-2 in their trips to the red zone. Obviously, it was all Carlson field goals whenever they did get into Rams territory, but those 2 red zone visits, one derailed by a penalty on Andre James on a 6-yard gain, a throw to the 8-yard line of the Raiders or Rams, or maybe it was the 6-yard line. But anyway, in any event, Andre James gets called for an illegal man downfield. That pushes it back to the 19-yard line.
Colton Miller was also downfield. So
right.
You're like, oh, Andre James. Well,
they can't call it on 2 players.
2 of them were downfield.
Exactly.
So they could have called it on either guy.
So, yeah, the Raiders shot themselves in the foot rather than what would have been a 1st and goal or something along those lines, close to the end zone. They get it pushed back to the 19. They got it all the way to about the 9-yard line, but that's where it stalled. Daniel Carlson comes in for a 27-yard field goal. Then, down by 8 points in the fourth quarter, they get all the way to the 4-yard line of the Rams. 2 incomplete passes and a run for no gain. All of a sudden, it's 4th and goal from the 4. There's about 2 minutes and 50 seconds left in the game. Rightfully so. Antonio Pierce decides to go for it. The right decision. But DJ Glaze gets called for a procedure penalty that pushes it back 5 yards to the 9. The Raiders kick the field goal instead, trying to cut into the lead and maybe get another chance to score a game-winning touchdown. The point being, you can't have those kind of penalties in that area of the field when you're so challenged to score in the red zone, and then you shoot yourselves in the foot with 2 big penalties. Just not going to get it done.
Yeah, and they still should have gone for it. And
well, no doubt about it.
But they decided to kick a field goal instead. Just like earlier in the game, they decided to kick a field goal when they were down. It was 15 points at that time, I believe. Kicked a field goal then too. I mean, this is a very, very conservative coach. There's no question about it. I mean, last year, the most conservative coach in the league. This year, I think he's right up there. I don't think he's quite 32nd, but he might be in that same vicinity. He's been conservative since the time he got here. Was conservative once again, and I don't get it. I think when you're a team that needs to cut every corner and find every advantage, you need to make the right decisions in those cases, and the Raiders consistently do not. But in this case, they try to get within 5. They do. The plan works to some degree. If you want to say, hey, the plan worked out, but the plan worked out of them getting the ball inside their own 15-yard line with no timeouts, which is not really where you want to be. Part of going for it in that situation, just for people that are like, well, they got the field goal, they got the ball back, that's what they wanted. Well, it really isn't, because they got the ball 80 or 89 yards from their goal line. If you go for it and don't get it, you're pinning the Rams inside their own 10. By the time you get the ball back, you're probably getting around midfield. That's what you're trying to accomplish when you go for it, not just score the touchdown.
And I completely agree, but it's all moot because when you're turning the ball over, they have the minus 13. It continues to be the worst in the league.
It's moot, but it isn't. It's moot, but it isn't, because you're right.
No. I mean, I know what you're saying.
Because all these other situations are putting you in a place where you have to find.
No doubt about it. But
you have to cut every corner,
but
and they don't.
No doubt about it. And I'm in full agreement with Adam on the call. He should have gone for it on 4th and goal from the 9. But the bigger, just as big of an issue, if not bigger right now, is how they continually shoot themselves in the foot, with the turnovers and with the penalties. You just can't have that. They're not good enough, whether it's from a coaching standpoint, a talent standpoint, a quarterback standpoint, in these games where they're winnable games. This was not a good Rams team right now. They're going to get healthy. They're trying to bank as many wins as possible until they get Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and their offensive line back together. But this was a bad defense that was susceptible to the run. It was giving up, I think, the 3rd most points in the NFL. Their offense was, not good because of some of the injuries that they've been having. This is a winnable game. It was set up for the Raiders to win, and that's probably the last time I'm going to say that this year, in terms of a situation that was ready-made for them, for the Raiders, as challenged as they are, to win a game. I don't think that there's another game on their schedule as we sit here today.
You never know who's going to get knocked out of a game.
For sure. But as we sit here right now, this was about the most winnable game that they had for the rest of the year, and they cannot even take care of that kind of business when they're shooting themselves in the foot.
I'll tie it up like this. I'll steal from my writing as we do this podcast, because we do have stories. Check out my Vegas Nation. What I wrote is, the Raiders have not confirmed that Aiden O'Connell's thumb is broken. They still have to do further testing. They got to get back to Vegas. They got to test it out, see what it is. We don't know quite what the extent of his injury is. We do know that they're not a good team. We don't need further testing on that. We saw all the testing we need out on the field. They're not good. That's the bottom line of this team.
And I wanted to add this on the penalties. They were pretty good in the penalties this year. They've had 25 of their 42 penalties over the last 3 weeks. I'm sorry, what's happened in the last 3 weeks?
They've lost
every game of those 3
and don't
games.
forget, last week they only had 4, but all 4 were massive penalties.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
So exactly. They had the 4, which were, like Adam just said, massive, and then they had 11 2 weeks ago and 10 again today.
Yeah.
So,
and then in terms of the turnovers, not only are they not, and they did get an interception today, but not only are they turning it over too much? They're not forcing any turnovers. I believe the minus 13 margin after 7 games is the worst margin they've had since 1962.
It's
crazy,
mind-boggling. And
minus 13 through 7 games, almost minus 2 per game in the turnover ratio.
And not to point fingers, but Gardner Minshew is the primary culprit. He's got 10 on the year. It's really he's fumbled it 3 times and thrown 8 interceptions. One of those fumbles the Raiders pounced on, so it was not officially a turnover. But he's tied for the league lead with Will Levis over in Tennessee. And as he mentioned, and we're going to hear from Gardner Minshew, it's unacceptable and it's not fair to his teammates. Here's Gardner Minshew talking about his turnovers.
That's unacceptable to have that many turnovers. I got to be smarter with the ball. To have a game where we lose by 5 points and have 4 turnovers, that's critical. And it's not fair to the rest of the team. So I'm going to go back, look at the film. I'm not going to sulk, not going to pout, but whatever we got to do to fix it, I'm going to do it. I've never turned the ball over like this in my life. It's very frustrating. So just got to keep looking at it, keep studying, keep training good habits, and we're going to find our way out of this.
Well, you add it all up, Adam, and it doesn't add up to anything good. That's for darn sure. And as Adam said, what is indisputable is this is a bad football team, and it seems to be getting worse and unhealthier by the week. They're losing players. I think the 2 positives are Brock Bauer, just off to a fabulous start in his rookie season. Alexander Madison had over 90 yards rushing on 23 carries, right about 4 yards per carry. That was good for him. But other than that, this is just not a good football team, and I raise that because this week we saw somebody walk through the doors in Henderson. His name is Tom Brady, and as somebody here today told me, make no mistake, Tom Brady is going to be running the show. Well, some of what's going on, I think, is going to set up for some rather easy decisions for him potentially. Don't want to get into all of what that might be, but you know that Tom Brady is sizing this situation up, and it's going south in a hurry. And with the Kansas City Chiefs waiting at Allegiant Stadium next week, followed by a trip to Cincinnati to play the dangerous, whether you want to call them good right now, but they're always dangerous with Joe Burrow and that crew. The Raiders could be looking at 2-7 here pretty quickly, and that's just another lost season that it seems to be headed in that direction.
It does, and I think what you're referring to is Tom Brady is coming to Vegas whenever he does get there with a mop and a broom. He's going to start cleaning. So
right.
We'll see how that plays out. But for right now, they've got a lot of guys that are trying to play to impress both the Raiders and other teams, and see what it is. I mean, that's kind of where they're at right now, 2-5. I mean, could they make some sort of miracle run? Sure, but I think most likely you're now in evaluation mode, and let's be honest, playing for the draft.
Right. Exactly, and it's probably I can't think of a time when I've covered the team where it was more ripe for that. I always felt like there was a chance to compete for something. It was never Super Bowls or anything like that, but make something of a season, get to the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game when they had Derek Carr and Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow and. But it seems so far away from those seasons right now. Not that those were great seasons by any stretch of the imagination or great teams. They were flawed. But it just seems so much further away now. And I think, to Adam's point, playing for the draft, playing for that young quarterback, which I think is the vital must that the Raiders have to do, among other things. And we'll see what Tom Brady has to say about all that. But it might be time, if you're a Raider fan, to start looking at Shedeur Sanders, to start looking at Cam Ward from the University of Miami, and some of these top quarterbacks that could be available in this year's draft. I'm not saying give up on the season, but you might want to pay attention to some of those young quarterbacks, because I think the Raiders are going to be in play for one of those guys by the time April rolls around.
Yeah, I would enjoy college football on Saturdays.
Yeah, there you go. For Adam Hill, I'm Vinny Bonsignore. We're here at SoFi Stadium after yet another loss. I want to say thanks to Heidi Fang, our great producer, and thanks to all of our listeners and all of our subscribers, and thanks to the Los Angeles and thanks to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm in Los Angeles. Thanks to the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports for all their support in what we do. We'll talk to you guys midweek next week and see what's on the docket for the Kansas City Chiefs. Until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you on this week sometime.